Hey guys, Dr. Shelly here. If you just tuned into this Facebook Live, it is probably because you want to know how many calories a day you should be eating and how many grams of carbs, protein, and fat you need to get every day. Let me start by explaining to you what a carb, protein, and fat is, because believe it or not, most people don't really have a good understanding on what actually constitutes a carbohydrate, a protein, and a fat. So I'm going to start with carbs. A carbohydrate has 4 calories per gram, and a carbohydrate is made up of sugars. So when you eat a carbohydrate, it is broken down into sugar in your body. The best way to understand and to remember whether or not something you're about to eat is a carbohydrate and it's not a protein or a fat is ask yourself the question, did it have a mom or a dad? So let's do this. Is this a carbohydrate, a protein, or a fat? If it didn't have a mom or a dad, it's a carbohydrate, okay? It's an onion. Let's do another one. Let me do this real quick. Oops, sorry. This is sweet potato. Did it have a mom or a dad? No. So it's a carbohydrate. Kind of get how this works. So a carbohydrate is anything that does not have a mom or a dad. And that rule applies all the time. And don't try to say that the sweet potato had a mom or a dad, because it didn't, okay? So carbohydrates are really important because your muscles use carbs for energy. Carbohydrates are also really important because that's where you get vitamins and minerals. You don't really get many vitamins and minerals from fat and protein. So carbohydrates are going to supply your vitamins and minerals to you. And carbohydrates are also where you get fiber from. And without fiber, you're not able to move your food along in your digestive tract. So I'm going to talk about different diets that are higher in carbs or lower in carbs, but basically you need fiber, you need vitamins and minerals in order to have a healthy digestive tract and to stay healthy. So that's carbohydrates. Proteins, on the other hand, proteins, if you ask yourself the question, did it have a mom or a dad? The answer is yes, okay? In order for something to be a protein, it had a mom or a dad. So this is turkey. Is it a protein? Yes. That's pretty straightforward. It looks like muscle. It's protein, okay? Some people are like, oh, I'm a vegetarian and I eat beans and I get enough protein. But did the beans have a mom or a dad? No. So beans, although they have some protein in it, it's actually categorized as a carb, all right? So protein is really important because proteins are actually what form muscles. Protein breaks down into amino acids. So remember, carbs break down into sugar, proteins break down into amino acids. Amino acids are so important because you are basically a real, live, walking amino acid, okay? Amino acids are the building block of our body, our organs, our muscles, everything. So protein is really, really important. All 3 are important, but protein is vital, and most people get enough carbs and they don't get enough protein, okay? So if you're gonna go eat something and you're like, I didn't get enough protein today, ask yourself, did this food have a mom or a dad? If the answer is yes, it's a protein, eat it. Proteins also have 4 grams proteins have 4 calories for every gram. So they're similar to carbs in that sense, that they have 4 calories per gram, okay? Let's talk about fat, okay? Fat is really interesting because fat is one of the macros that doesn't have 4 calories per gram. It has 9 calories per gram. And this is why people think that fat will make them fat. And that's actually not true. The reason that fat can cause weight gain in people and make them fat is because for 1 gram of fat, you're actually getting more calories, okay? So if you were to have 1 gram of anything and you wanted to eat as much as you could, don't choose fat, okay? You want to choose carbs or protein. You're going to get like more as far as quantity of food, okay? But fat is really, really important, okay? Fat actually is necessary for your cells. All of your cells have a a fat membrane, okay? So in order for your cells to function properly, you have to have fat. So your brain needs fat. You can't have proper hormone production without enough fat. So fat and protein are so important because you are made of fat and protein, and you are what you eat. So if your diet is mostly carbs, you're gonna have a lot of health issues if you don't already. And this is why I am not a big fan of a vegetarian or a vegan diet, because it is almost impossible to get enough protein and fat from good sources. A vegetarian diet is it's a really high carb diet most of the time, okay? And in fact, I don't even believe that there's any vegetarians. You're like a pastatarian, or you're like a crackertarian or a potato-tarian. Most vegetarians don't just eat vegetables. So I don't even get that part. In fact, if somebody comes into my office and they need help improving their health and they tell me they're a vegetarian, the first thing I ask them is, are you stuck on that? Like, are you willing to not be a vegetarian anymore? Because you're going to get better faster. And it's true. People who are not vegetarians end up getting better faster. So let's go back to fats. What is a fat? Okay. Fats also have a mom or a dad. Most of them. Some of them don't. But for the sake of trying to categorize these, fat came from an animal. Okay. This is ghee. And ghee is a non-lactose, it's kind of like butter, okay? It's like butter for people who don't want to have like the lactose, okay? It's actually pretty good. I only started using this recently and it's amazing. But it's fat, and you only need a little amount of it to cook with, because remember, there's 9 calories per gram when it comes to fat, okay? The other really interesting thing about fat is that without enough fat in your diet, you can't absorb certain vitamins. So, and this is why all of these 3 macros, you have to have all 3 of them. And I'm going to talk about how many macros you need specifically, but you need all 3. You can't just say, that's it, I'm not eating carbs anymore, or that's it, I'm cutting all the fat out, because the 3 of them work together, okay? And a lot of foods have 2 of the 3 within that food. So like an avocado. Is an avocado a fat or is it a carb? It's definitely not a protein. We know that. You got to ask yourself, did it have a mom or a dad? If it had a mom or a dad, it's either a protein or a fat, okay? So an avocado, since it didn't have a mom or a dad, it's a carbohydrate, but it does have healthy fats in it too. But we still categorize it as a carb because the percentage of carbs in an avocado is greater than the amount of fat, okay? So that's why these all work together. You can't even absorb or digest protein properly, which you need for your muscles, right? You can't even digest and absorb protein properly without fat and carbs. And if you only eat protein and you don't eat carbs, without the fiber, you can get constipated and all sorts of problems. So that's why you need all 3. So I'm going to help you figure out how many grams of each you need, okay? And this is one of the most common questions I get when people find out that I help people with their nutrition for a living. They're like, oh, how many calories a day should I eat? Or how many carbs should I eat a day? So this is how I recommend that people figure it out. And there's so many different ways to do it, but this is how I have found works the best. What you want to do is you want to start with your carbs, okay? And you want your carbs to be about 50% of the total calories or less, 50% or less of the total calories that you eat for the day, okay? So find out how many calories you eat. Just like log your food for a couple days. I use MyFitnessPal. It's my favorite thing in the world. I don't know what I would do without it. It's a great app, and it will help you figure out the total calories that you're eating in a day. Just don't change anything. Just log food exactly how you're eating it right now for a couple days. So you take the total calories that you're eating for the day, and you want to take half of that or less, and that's what you should be getting from your carbs. So maybe like 30 to 50%, and it totally depends on if you're working out a lot or if you're pretty sedentary. So, but just for a general purpose so you can get a good idea, I mean, 30 to 50% should come from carbs. Most of my patients who need, they're trying to heal from certain conditions, I tend to keep their carbs pretty low. We generally do under 100 grams of carbs per day. And there's exceptions to this. Like if you find out that you're eating 200 grams of carbs a day, when you start logging, you figure this out, you're not going to want to cut it down to 60 grams of carbs in like 2 days, overnight, just cold turkey like that, because you're not going to be able to sustain that. It's going to be kind of shocking to your body. You're going to not feel right for a couple days. If you're okay with that, that's the fastest way to do this. But what I recommend is that, let's say you're having 200 grams of carbs a day. What I would do is maybe for a week go to like 170, and if you feel fine and it's manageable, then the following week you're going to want to go to like 150 and just keep working your way down. And I would say if you're trying to heal from a certain issue, then keeping your carbs under 100 grams is a really good place to start, okay? So once you get to your once you figure out the grams of carbs you need for the day, I like to look at the protein next, okay? So protein, remember, it also has 4 calories per gram, okay, just like carbs. The protein, a good starting point and a good rule of thumb is to figure out how much you weigh, step on the scale. Let's say you weigh 115 pounds, okay? You're gonna wanna have 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So you would want, in that case, 115 grams of protein. Let's say you weigh 200 pounds. How many grams of protein do you think you're going to need? Good. You're so smart. I know you all figured it out. You're going to need 200 grams of protein, and that's a starting point, okay? Most people usually fall a little bit short of their protein goal. I know that's usually my problem. I do not have a problem meeting my carb goals. I can eat a couple of these and I'm there, right? Everything has tons of carbs in it. It's harder to reach your protein goal, okay? So focus on staying under 100 grams of carbs, and then the next thing is you want to focus on getting enough protein, and you go off of your weight, okay? So if you're 100 pounds, you eat 100 grams of protein. The next thing we need to figure out is how many grams of fat you need. So based on how many calories you're eating, the fat is going to fall into what's left over. So once you meet your carb goal and then you meet your protein goal, whatever is left over is going to be the fat goal, okay? So I'm going to give you guys an example, and you can write this down and kind of go off of this as setting your own goals, because everybody's going to be a little bit different based on how much they weigh or what their goals are in the gym or just their health issues that they're trying to resolve. But this is the example. Write this down. Use this as a starting point, okay? Let's say you're eating 1,345 calories a day. You start logging your food, and that's the number of calories on average that you're eating, okay? If you are going to try and keep your carbs between 30 and 50% of your total calories, you're going to be around like 120 grams of carbs. So that's 36% of your total calories for the day. So let's say you're eating 120 grams of carbs and you're good with that. You got to that goal. Awesome. Then you start looking at the protein. And I'll use the example of if you weigh 115 pounds, then you're going to want 115 grams of protein. So now we have the carbs, which is 120 grams of carbs, protein, which is 115 grams of protein. So where does your fat fall? If, again, you're trying to stick to 1,345 calories per day, what you're going to have left is 30% is going to be fat, which is 45 grams. So write this down. I'll say it one more time. If you are trying to stick to a 1,345 calorie a day goal, a good breakdown that's going to be thirds is going to be 120 grams of carbs, 45 grams of fat, and 115 grams of protein, okay? So I want to talk about logging your food real quick, okay? Because all of this information is awesome, and now you know what a carb is, and a protein, and a fat. You can distinguish it easily. Logging your food is the most important thing you can do, because without logging your food, how are you going to know how many grams of protein or carbs and fat you ate in a day? I mean, if you can do it without logging your food, I want you to comment on here and tell me how you do it, because it is almost impossible to know how much you're eating without either putting it in an app, like in a calculator, like a macro calculator, writing it on a piece of paper, going off the nutrition information on the back here. So 1 serving of ghee is going to be 1 tablespoon, and there's 13 grams of fat in here. Unless you have some internal calculator in your brain that can keep track of everything you're eating in the day, you have to log your food, okay? It's not that hard. Do it once a day. Do it when you eat. I do it as I eat, so I don't get to the end of the day and forget what I ate. But then I also log it as I eat so that I know how many grams of carbs and protein and fat I have the next meal, okay? So let me know if you guys have any questions. I know there's a bunch of you watching right now, and I can try to answer your questions if they kind of popped up in your mind. But once you set all these goals for yourself, then what you can do is, if you want to lose weight, okay, obviously you have to eat less calories, or you have to burn more calories. But that's a topic that we'll talk about in a different Facebook Live, okay? But you have to eat less calories, all right? But you want to keep the ratio of carbs, protein, and fat pretty much the same. If you're somebody who's going to be lifting weights a lot, working out a lot, when you go to the gym and you lift weights, what you're doing is you're not building muscle in the gym, okay? This is a huge misconception. When you go to the gym and you lift weights, you are not building muscle, okay? If that blew somebody's mind, then awesome. I can sleep happy tonight then. When you go to the gym, you're actually breaking down muscle, okay? You're lifting weights, which is making little tiny micro tears in your muscle, okay? That is not building muscle. You are building muscle when you eat stuff like this to fill in the amino acids in this protein, will fill in those little micro tears in your muscle, and that is when you're building the muscle. The other thing you need in order to build that muscle is fat, okay? Believe it or not. And it's not because the fat is going to fill in those little micro tears, but in order for the protein to work properly, you need the fat. Every cell in your body has a fatty lipid layer around it. And in order for those cells to work properly, including your muscle, it needs a little bit of fat, all right? So think about this for those of you who work out, okay? When you go to the gym and you're in the gym, you are not building muscle, you're breaking muscle in the gym, okay? The energy that you use, that your muscles use when you go to lift weights, is anything that didn't have a mom or a dad, okay? Carbohydrates turn to sugars that are stored in your muscle. So when you go to the gym, you lift weights, you are burning this sweet potato, okay? When you go home and you eat your next meal, your muscle is actually healed and made stronger by protein and fat. I'm oversimplifying this, but this is the general principle. So when you ask me, Dr. Shelly, how many calories should I eat in a day? I can't just give you a number, okay? Or, Dr. Shelly, how many carbs can I eat in a day? I can't just give you a number without knowing what your goals are, without knowing what you're currently doing, because if I just give you a goal and it's wrong based on, what your goals are, then I didn't do anyone any good. So if you know anybody who's trying to diet, if you know anybody who is a vegetarian who thinks they get enough protein, have them watch this video, share it with them. It's really hard to ask a question of how much should I eat without knowing this information. So I hope this helped you guys. And if you have any question, as always, just put them in the comments. I'd be happy to help them, can't even speak right now. Talking about macros. But if you have any questions, put them in the comments and I'll go back and I'll answer all of them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.